Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I was like, it's just like an extra limb so I can carry all the groceries in at one time and not have to make multiple trips.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And then moving on to the second one, it's almost like an even split on runny nose or bad breath. Where are my runny nose people? Let me see your hands up in. Rather have the runny nose than the bad breath? Is it because you could stick like a tissue up there and be good to go? It's not offensive. Yeah. My bad breath people, let me see your hands. All right, there they are. Just put some gum or mouthwash or something in. Yeah. And then it looks like finally that we have only one individual who's used Hyperdocs. If you've used Hyperdocs, will you raise your hand for me? Mika, you want to explain a little bit how you used it in your classroom before we start?
I'm not sure if it's the same, but like with that interactive classroom that I had been working on, where I can post like an image and it has a link connected to another thing and it connected to another thing. So
yeah.
And I wanted to use the staff thing, the staff wellness board. So I wanted to like take this training real quick to refresh.
Yeah. Good.
Nicole,
good. That's
are
great.
you going to share?
Nicole is not going to share. She's going to eat today. She's not she is not co-teaching with me.
I want to hear what she's eating. It looks good.
Nicole, would you like to chime in and explain? She's going to have it all up in her teeth.
It's soul bowl. Little acai action. Really close to redwood. And delicious.
Oh, I thought you made it.
No, I did not. I went and bought it because my husband was hungry. And so I was like, okay, I will go get food.
She could make it though, because she's a phenomenal cook. So, all right, we're going to jump in. Mika, thank you so much for explaining like what you did. I do want to clarify something that, and we'll talk about it a little bit in this, but there is a difference between kind of a hyperlinked doc, which is what I think more so, Mika, you're describing, and a actual hyperdoc. Hyperdocs are actually a coined term, and they're a creation, and there's like a whole platform and website. And so we're going to go through that today, and I'll hopefully make it a little clear by the end, because I thought the same thing when I started, and found that they are a little bit different. I do want to be transparent with you guys. I have never used a hyperdoc in my own classroom. I've used a hyperlinked document, so a choice board, but never a hyperdoc. And the reason why I chose to present on it today was twofold. One, I felt like I wanted to learn it. And so I thought, what a better way to learn it myself than to teach other people about it, because that's how we roll, right? And then the second reason is, I kind of mentioned this in my last session if you were with Nicole and I, but this idea of choice is going to be really, really important. Individual students are going to need to be given an asynchronous lesson that is more than just every day, like write this thing, do this thing, in my opinion. Just because like if we see our kids, our first, second, third period kids on Monday, we're not going to see them again until Thursday. And so if we don't create like a robust asynchronous learning experience in addition to the synchronous, we're going to fail them, right? Because they're not going to have a ton to do. Now, when I say robust, I'm not saying it like that. I don't want you to mistake that for like a lot of work. That's not what I mean. When I say robust, I mean like the deeper thinking, something that's stimulating them to think beyond just the basic. Like for my own class, this is going to be a challenge, but read this thing, annotate it, respond, be done. Like I'm really going to strive to get them to do a little bit more with it, more interacting with each other on the discussion boards, more interacting with content, just because it won't be the same as just like, here, I introduced this thing in a face-to-face setting, and now I'm going to have you go and just finish it for our next class period, because our next class period will be 3 days away. And so just some things I'm thinking about. And I felt like the choice board that I introduced in our Google Docs presentation just earlier at 9, this is another option for you guys to create. And like I mentioned in that one too, like there's already a database of a gazillion hyperdoced assignments that you can pull from. You do not need to do it all or recreate the wheel. It is going to be imperative, guys, that we are taking advantage of the materials that are being put online for free for people, because nobody's done this before. We don't teach virtually. This is all new. And so I'm encouraging you, you know, I know I kept getting bogged down because I'm thinking like, how do I take what I do in my classroom and just translate it to the virtual thing? And as I tried to do that, I was just so stressed out because it just doesn't work that way. And then I started to do some like research about what like virtual lessons I could look for. I just typed in AP language because that's what I teach, virtual lessons. And I started to see all of these other things we could do with it and these platforms that can support it. Okay. I want to reiterate one more time. I talk a lot about technology, and we do these presentations or these trainings on technology. Technology is just the tool. It's the way that we're getting the material into the student's hand. It's not about the technology, it's about the learning, okay? So with a Hyperdoc, you have to be very mindful about exactly how you're structuring it and planning it to ensure that you're giving it's like has depth and it's not just a bunch of links, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and present my screen. I have put the slide deck in the chat there, so if you would wanna click and follow along, you could, but you do not have to. I will click and show and all those good things too. Are there any questions before I jump in? Okay, cool. Once again, there is a chat. So I'll have it open on here and I'll try to get to you when I see it. So if you have questions, you can ask it there, or if you have a question and I'm in the middle of something, just unmute and say, Shannon, and I'll stop and I'll go ahead and answer. Okay, so I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. Okay. So this may look familiar this template may look familiar to some of you. Nicole actually just previewed it at our last training. It is from Slides Mania. So I did not recreate the wheel on this. The cool thing about Slides Mania and Slides Go and Slides Carnival is they have linked, they've already created the templates. It's just a matter of you filling in the information on the templates. And so with Hyperdocs, there are steps that you take. So as you can see here, they're kind of laid out. You have your first step in any Hyperdoc creation is you start with you get them engaged, and then you move to the explore stage. And I'll explain in depth what these mean in a minute, but I just wanted to run through them. So engage and then explore. Then we have explain, apply, share, reflect, and finally extending the learning. So whatever we talked about or whatever the focus was for this Hyperdoc, the goal is to ultimately extend that learning out, right? So that it sticks and that it becomes relevant to life. Once again, if you have questions, please ask them. There may be a point where you ask a question for clarification, and I'm gonna get to that. Don't be offended if I say I'm about ready to talk about that. I'm just letting you know that that's coming up, okay? So the cool thing about this PowerPoint, because you know, we're all teachers too, and we're curious how it works, is I can just click and it's gonna go to the next tab. That's already linked, okay? And so this brings us to that conversation about like a Hyperdoc versus a hyperlinked document. So what does a Hyperdoc do? Well, it allows you ultimately to deliberately choose web tools to get students to do those different facets, right? Or those different skills to engage with it, explore a little bit, explain, apply, share, reflect, and then extend their learning. The whole goal of Hyperdocs as well is to give every single student who's participating in it a voice, right? One of the things that I think we hear a lot in the educational, instructional world is this idea that if you give students choice, then they're going to be able to have some ownership over their learning. And if you allow them to express their voice, then they're going to feel like they've been heard. And we all know as adults, it feels good to be heard. A lot of us right now are not feeling so heard by our district, and that was painful for a while, right? We're moving on, we're getting over it. I look at it as like a crazy ex-boyfriend or whatever. But you know, it's still good to be heard. It's good to feel like whatever your feelings are, ideas are, perspectives are, even if they're not valid or if they're emotionally fueled or whatever, it's nice to still get those validated and to be heard. And so when it comes to student learning, we need to be able to think about that. We need to think, how can we give our kids a voice? I don't know if you, politically, wherever you stand, it's not really the point here, but I don't know if you had the chance or were able to read any of the articles about the hashtag #DearVUSD that was put out by a bunch of former students. People want to be heard. People have things to say. And so if we as educators can create a platform and an environment where they are able to say things, right, where their voice is being heard in a structured, obvious way and appropriate to the school setting, then I think that would be a valuable tool to and something that they would take away. from the experience. And then Hyperdocs also allow for critical thinking and problem solving. That's kind of at the core of a Hyperdoc experience, is you really want them to think critically about whatever the theme or idea or a topic or learning objective is, and then ultimately take whatever the problem is and find solutions to it. That's higher level thinking, right? We always want to bring our kids from, you know, the basic just recall information to that, let me start, you know, creating ideas and things and putting it out into the world, the innovative element. And that's what Hyperdocs can do for us. And then finally, we are living in a digital world. I heard the other day, I was reading up on digital citizenship, right? And how we need to act appropriately within our virtual classrooms, and trying to figure out how I'm going to do that with my kids, have that conversation. And I read someone, I'm reading this book called Courageous Adventures. And the author said that we no longer have a digital footprint, which means like everything that you do on the internet is there. It's now a digital tattoo. Because the internet is so much more vast and robust and huge, like everything we do is going to be permanent, right? Everything lives in the cloud, whether students think it or not, whether we think it or not, everything we do digitally is a tattoo now. It's not just a footprint. Footprints eventually fade away, right? With wind or weather, or you can mess it up, right? With a tattoo, it's stuck. And so this idea of like a digital footprint or a digital tattoo, it doesn't always have to be connotated into mean negative, right? One thing that I think is going to become more and more common for our students is this idea that like whatever you create, you can put it out into the world. And now you have a digital artifact, so that when somebody Googles you one day, they can find your portfolio of work. They can find those things you've worked hard on. And that's what Hyperdoc does. It allows them to take their thinking and put it on a platform that they can then share with the world if they wanted to. So I thought that was kind of cool. One thing I do want to share, I'm aware that I'm a very overzealous, passionate person. And sometimes I go over the top. So if you're hearing all this and you're like, I can't handle, I get it. Ignore me. I'm just a little over the top, but at the end of the day, just understand that Hyperdocs gives students a voice and it allows them to think deeper about things, okay? So how do you design your own Hyperdocs? Well, first you have to start with your objectives. And I'm gonna say this, and I'll say it multiple times, this is not a quick process, right? If you're creating from new, anything you create from new is going to be tedious and take time, but it doesn't have to happen right now. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't need to, you don't need to create a Hyperdoc for Thursday. This could be something you work on, right? So maybe you don't introduce a Hyperdoc until second semester, but you're constantly like maybe working on it with your PLC all the way through. Don't feel like you need to take all these tools we're giving you and just run forward. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But this could be a process. Okay, so we can slow down, but you want to start thinking. You can't create a Hyperdoc until you think about what are your objectives, what are you trying to achieve, or what do you want the kids to do. Then you select your learning cycle, your packaging. You have to build the workflow and design your Hyperdoc. I'm going to show you this quick little video. I'm actually going to ask you to watch it because I think it's worthwhile, and then we'll go ahead and continue on. I'll have you watch a portion of it. This one was the long one I chose.
Hi, thanks for joining us and watching the Hyperdocs channel. Raise your virtual hand if you're feeling overwhelmed and exhausted from remote lesson planning. Many teachers have expressed fatigue over learning new tech tools and stressing about whether or not their lessons were at the same caliber as they were in their traditional learning environments. Many educators have expressed a need to rethink design and delivery of lesson plans. We believe that Hyperdocs can be that solution. Grounded in effective pedagogy, the creator of the lesson is in control of the lesson flow. Packaged nicely and customized for your learners, Hyperdoc will put you back in the driver's seat of lesson planning. In this video, I will show you how to create a Hyperdoc in 5 steps. I will show you the process involved in thinking through your lesson decisions so that you will be off and creating in no time. Let's pretend.
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. I'm going to go ahead. This is a linked video, so everything you see, you could try to click on, and if you see your cursor go from an arrow to a hand, you know that it's a linked piece, and you can just click there. I wanted to show you, she's going to introduce this planning tool, and if you have this, you can go ahead and you can just kind of make a copy. So File, make a copy, and then that'll allow you to write in it. And so you could put your objectives when this would be a brainstorming tool. You could talk about like, what is the cycle of learning? Do you want them to explore, explain, apply? And when you watch that video, it'll give you more insight into like what this means. There's a bunch of different types of models. I didn't go into them in detail today because I felt like more so it would take a lot more time for us to move through those models, but there is a bunch of information you can find. I would encourage you to watch that video. Then you think about packaging. Remember, this isn't necessarily about the tech. This is the tech as a tool. So tech is just the thing that you're using to get this out to the kids and to get them to be able to complete or show their thinking in a variety of different ways. So you think about, would it be best for me to use a Google Doc at this point, because you're going to use a variety of different types of platforms? Would it be best to include a form here? Maybe I want to include Google Maps, right? Or sites or slides. Maybe I want them to demonstrate their thinking by creating a visual image. And then why? You always want to think about, why is this the best tool? Okay, because if you're just throwing in tech and you're not thinking about the deliberate nature of why you're choosing it, then it's just a tech piece. It may not be the right piece. So you really want to reflect on that. Then you need to think about, how are you pushing out content? How are they going to receive this, right? So you can make a Hyperdoc, but like, are you going to give it to them on Schoology? Are you going to give it to them on Classroom? Are you going to push it out in their emails? How are you going to collect the work? Is it going to be turned in on Schoology? Probably for most of us. And then how are you planning on providing feedback? Feedback is essential in this process. If kids aren't receiving feedback, then what's the point, right? They're just creating items and they're not letting their voice be heard. Here's the other option. Perhaps kids create Hyperdocs and they come up with some ideas. Maybe you set up one of your Zoom meetings with your small class, or even break it out into breakout rooms, and they get to have some time to talk through like what they're thinking and what they came up with. And then their peers can provide that feedback verbally, or you can. There's a really wonderful, for those of you guys that provide feedback using like the comments feature on Google Doc, there's this great extension called Mote, M-O-T-E, Mote, and it allows you to to record yourself giving verbal feedback, and then it auto captions it, so they can read it, or they can just listen to it, or they can do both. You do need to check the captions occasionally, because sometimes it'll put like random words you didn't say, depending on how clear and concise. So once again, that's M-O-T-E, Mote, and it's a Chrome extension. This is the icon up here. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty small. And then finally, design. And this is where Nicole's kind of lesson last session about, there's so many slides out there that are already created for you. I used it for this. So don't feel like you need to recreate the wheel there. Maybe you're just going to do it on a doc. How are you going to distinguish though between, the explain and the apply? So you got to be mindful of that. And I'm going to show you some examples, quite a few examples to get you started, so that you're not just kind of figuring this out on your own about what does it mean, design? Okay. All right. So we're going to move on. Are there any questions thus far? Great. All right. So next is going to be the different parts. So when I said at the beginning, I mentioned the idea of, sorry, one more. I didn't link this correct. The very beginning, when we talked about the different parts of the Hyperdoc, engage, explore, explain, apply, these kind of go into detail about that. So it says to engage students at the beginning of a lesson, insert video, image, quote, or another inspirational hook in this box. So this is like another lesson planning document, and you can just click right here and get that document if you wanted to make it fillable and actually go through that process. I just kind of cut it up here for us visually. But so the first step is to engage them, to draw them in, to make them interested. Then you want to encourage them to explore. So this is a curation of a collection of resources based on your topic that kids could dive into and explore a little further. It could be articles, videos, infographics, websites, text excerpts. The next one is explain. So this is where they would ultimately allow them to give them some sort of like direct instructions that they can take from you, and you can use a web tool to do that, or you can do like small group teaching or whatever it may be, and then apply. This is where the assignment comes in. This is where you create an assignment for them to apply what they've learned from the web tools. They collaborate with their peers they got from you, and then they connect it beyond the classroom. Share, this is how they would share with a more authentic audience, so their peers, or maybe they want to publish it to the world. There's this great thing in Flipgrid that I'm going to show at 1:30 that allows them to take their learning and like connect with people all over the world in an easy, seamless platform. It's called Grid Pals. And then there's always, always, always an opportunity to reflect. Okay, and it says you can do face-to-face or digital. Obviously, we can't do face-to-face, but a digital reflection needs to be incorporated. And then extend would be more links or activities that they can do to deepen their learning. And if you clicked on basic Hyperdoc here, it will give you this template, and you can make a copy and then figure out how to move forward. So I wanted to show you the evolution of a woman's Hyperdoc process. So originally she created a website for her process. And so this is her Weebly page. And she put some ideas, and kind of you can move through a slideshow. And there's an article, part 1, here's what I want you to do, read the background about this, answer these questions, right? So this could be easily done in Google Sites. Do this, read these 3 primary articles, and then do something with it. And then this makes them put themselves in the like the shoes of a worker at a triangle factory. They're going to write a letter or an editorial, okay? And that's like ultimately like their end goal. So they're viewing, reading, going and diving in like one piece, and then answering questions. And they're going to go find 3 other pieces to analyze. So that's more of that like autonomy choice aspect. And then they respond. So that was the the website. And then she decided to change it to a Google Doc Hyperdoc. So using Google Doc as her platform for delivery. So it's made up like a newspaper, right? And these are the essential questions. Here's the introduction. So they would read this background about the 1911 factory fire, and then their task. And then it continues on. Here's your explore. Here's what you're going to do. And then explain, apply. And then she could have extended the thinking had she wanted to at the end. And then finally, this is what she ended up with. This is her Hyperdoc, but it's on a Google Slides. So I must have linked that wrong. I linked that wrong. I'll fix that, but essentially it looks like this, and it's a Google slideshow, and every single slideshow makes it a little bit more visually appealing, and she kind of ups the ante on her activities. So sorry that's improperly linked, but I will fix that before I put it out. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. Thanks for the non-verbal shake of the head. I appreciate that, Mika. So I taught this last session, but for those of you guys that weren't in it, this is life-changing. Any Google Doc or slides or drawings, anything that you want to give out to the kids, but you want to give it out, you don't want to make it necessarily an individual assignment, you just kind of want to share it with the kids, either as a note-taking tool or something along that line. You can force a copy. So when your kids click on the web link, you can make them like, it automatically forces them to make a copy. They don't have to get it and then file and make a copy, because if you just give a kid an item and they don't remember to make a copy, then they're going to start like typing on your master document. And if you have 36 kids typing on one document, that's just silly. So what you do is, this is the URL link. This is the URL link. And you go to the end where you see the slash and edit, and then all the stuff that follows. You delete everything from edit and to the end, and you change it to copy, and you send that link to your students. Yeah, I know, you're right. Jeff put kid or a teacher, we don't copy. Yeah, we forget to do that, and then it's like crazy and everything's moved. But this automatically will force them to make a copy. So if I took like this URL and I just went to the very end and it says edit, and I changed that to copy, this is what your kids would see when you give them that URL. They have to click make a copy, and then it automatically makes their own individual copy that would live in their Google Drive. Okay, so that's a tool. If you give them a link and it's not active, meaning that when you go to click on it, nothing happens, there's a shortcut to make it an active link. You just highlight the whole thing and you push Control+K. If you are on a Mac, you push the little Command K. So that's that little butterfly looking thing. And it automatically takes a link and makes it a hyperlink, so, or a active link. Any questions so far? This is just like, how do you share your Hyperdoc with people? Okay, thank you, thank you. See, you notice one thing, I don't know if you noticed, but I commented on Mika's nonverbal shake of her head, right? And now every single one of you, when I asked any questions so far, shook your head. That's another tool that you can use when you're teaching virtually, right? You need to lead them and cue them into like exactly what you're expecting from them, because they won't know otherwise. And by pointing out Mika doing something awesome, you guys were like, ooh, I want that validation too, or that's what she expects. And so you all shook your head for the most part when I asked if you had any questions. So, all right, this is that thing I was talking about earlier at the beginning of the lesson, okay? That idea that like many of you guys are getting all these tools, or maybe you're feeling bogged down, or you're like, I am not like this most tech savvy individual, and so I'm just freaking out. Here's like the progression of integrating tech tools, okay? A lot of us are at the curious crawl. The fact that you're in these trainings, the fact that you're here, whether you feel like you're adequate at it or not, or good at it or not, the fact that you're here is a curious crawl. You are at this stage. You want to explore new solutions for teaching. You're saying it's worth learning about this stuff, even though I'm not sure I'm going to implement it perfectly, right? You might be at that stage where you're only using Google apps like Docs and Slides and Forms and such, right? But you could see or imagine like what the potential will be. Eventually, as you start to become more comfortable, you'll move into this creation walk. And that's where you'll like try, and you'll create one single lesson plan, right? And you'll customize that design just a little bit, and you'll practice this process of workflow and how it could interact. And then you reimagine, you start to think, okay, if I could do this, I could probably change this assignment and this assignment and this assignment. And then there's the impact run. Eventually you'll find yourself like packaging lessons in new ways, right? We're gonna figure this out. It may not be until next year, but we're gonna figure this out, right? We're going to learn how to interact in a virtual classroom. It's just going to happen because we have no other choice. We can sit and we can lament. And I tell you, I do a lot of bitching. Let me tell you, there's moments where I literally want to flip my table. I've cried. I told my friends I've cried more in the last like 3 weeks than I think I've cried my whole life. And I'm counting being a baby. Like, it's constant tears, but I pick myself up because I know I have to, right? There's nothing like being forced to do something that makes you do something. And so we're going to get this. And eventually we'll see ourselves start moving through these stages. And then maybe you're at this run stage, right? Where you're starting to just, as you start thinking about lessons, you're already packaging them in new ways. They don't look the same as your traditional classroom because you're taking a little bit of a risk and trying and then readjusting, and a little bit of a risk and trying. You're developing not only lessons, but whole units of study, right? You're reflecting on your progress, you're moving, you're changing, you're considering what could be. And then finally you'll find yourself one day, and it may be a couple of years from now, it may be a couple months from now, a few days, probably not, but you'll find yourself flying. That's where you are so confident that you start to share your lessons out. You start to say, I created this thing, I like it, I feel good about it. Here, let me show you. And then when we do return to traditional classroom, because that will happen one day, you start to find yourself having a blended learning space. So no longer are we doing virtual or traditional, but we are combining those things. And so we have elements of Hyperdocs linked in with the face-to-face, and we're using them simultaneously to advance the learning of our students. So I added this because I do think that sometimes people are like, this is too much information, I'm getting bogged down, I can't do it. It's okay to crawl. It's okay to be curious. If you don't take the risks, if you don't try, then you're still stuck in the same place you are right now, right? And I'm going to try and I'm going to fail over and over and over again. And the book that I'm reading, Courageous Adventures, she talks about failing forward, and that this is going to be hard. Everybody's struggling, but like, if we don't try, then we stay stuck. But if we choose to fail forward, then hopefully when we do fail, it's like, okay, that didn't work. Let me go readjust and try it again. Hopefully it doesn't cause us just to stop, throw up our hands and say, I'm done, because our kids deserve more than that, right? Okay, so there was one, I wanted to go back here to kind of show you this idea of like, why would we use Hyperdocs and what do they look like? Okay, now that we've talked through like the different processes, let's see it in action, what it practically looks like. So I've tried to include some different types. I do want to point you out when you are looking at the slide deck, down here at the bottom left, it says and more Hyperdocs. This is a website. It's called hyperdocs.co. And the people that have essentially come up with the, or created the Hyperdocs, they have created a curation site where they have these Google files, or rather Google folders with tons and tons and tons of already Hyperdoc creations based on subject. So it looks like this. Right, and so if we go click on science, it'll open up into my drive. And my internet wasn't being slow right now. I have too many things open up here. These are all the different, it's all grade levels, so it's not just high school, but you can see that there's all of these are already created Hyperdocs that you can make copies, tweak, and it becomes, you know, something that you can learn and use. I'm just going to keep going. You guys see how much creation content there are. And that is the same for like pretty much everything. So I also wanted to point out to Jeff and Bob and Diana, look right here, career and technical education. So you aren't alone. I know you guys get left out a lot, right? But you're not alone in this, and they've created things for you. So I'm going to show you a couple of the things that we've done. So I put one for chemical reactions because I knew Mary would be here. So this one's for you. And I don't know if you can use it as is, but you can always, anytime it says view only, you can go to file, make a copy of entire presentation, and then it lives in your drive and you own it, and you can tweak and change anything you need. But it gives you ideas of like how to use this slide deck, right? It has like a job description list, lab station jobs. It gives this already linked like videos that people could watch from Bill Nye and this sodium chloride, whatever. And then it just keeps going. And I'm not going to click on every document, but you can see like there's a whole process. I mean, it just keeps going. Do you have to do all of it? No. Do you want to do some of it? Sure. Right. But it is already made for you. And like literally you could go through and see, does this work for me? And if it works, shoot, put that in. And that right there is like 4 asynchronous lessons. And if you just tell your kids, you need to be clear, do slides this number through this number on by this day, you know, then you have a lesson for 4 days that they could be working on. And it not only just like, it goes through that process, right? Those engage, explain, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a whole thing. I also included one for geometry. I don't even know if we teach geometry anymore, but I figured there'd be a math people, and there's like a ton of math stuff. So these are all, you know, clickable lessons that you could click on. This is how you could show your work. It gives examples. This is like linking them back to the top, whatever. You would just need to make a copy for it. Multimedia text sets. Let's see what else we have. I also put electricity, charges, and statics. So this is another way to show, what do I know about electricity? Here's a video to watch. There's just some kind of like to lay out their thinking, more to explore. This is kind of cool. When you click on it, it opens up the drawing and you can like manipulate it, right? So the kids would be able to move the drawings that are already created, and you can check on their work to see whether they understand this concept. So there's that. Here is for history. This is a lesson on, I believe, yellow journalism. So it goes over the USS Maine, gives like political cartoons. You have to choose one or the other. And every time you click, notice it has like a new document that takes them elsewhere. So this is an article from the New York Journal that they commit to, or the New York Times, depending on, it's like choose your own adventure. This is a what do you think? So it opens up a Google form that they would fill out based on the article that they saw. This asks them to stop and explore. So real quick, so this would take them out to like Google Maps, and they could then look around like to the area that we're talking about, right? It's just a street version of that. So it's a lot, there's a lot of options, and it continues to go. And then we have, this is for those of you guys that are interested in personal development, like you want to get better at ed tech. This is a self-paced ed tech training, Hyperdoc. So it goes through and it can give you all the different platforms. This is basic G Suite for education. These are some PD about like different things in Chrome, like how to go into incognito mode, how to manipulate tabs, how to open, like if I accidentally close a tab, how do I open it again with one single click? By the way, you just right click over in like the open area and it says reopen close tab. Google Calendar, Gmail, Google Drive, Classroom, Google Doc, Google Sheet, Google Slides, drawing, form, groups. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And so augmented reality, virtual reality, somebody's created this. It's a labor of love. And so if that's something you're interested in, that I linked that there for you guys to do some self-paced guides. Social emotional learning, there's a whole folder in here on that start of the school year and community building. And so this is that, you get there by clicking on at the bottom of this right here on slide 5. It'll open this up and you can like go and click and see all those things. But this would be like it's like about community building and being in equity and compassion. So it's all are welcome. We have Humans of New York. So this is about building empathy and talking about like stories and how the impact of stories. And so people have created this. I don't know if you guys are familiar or follow like on Instagram, Humans of New York. It's really, really kind of fascinating. There's also a website you can go to, and at the bottom of these lessons, the person that's created it has given you guys like tips, teachers tips to use to be able to like walk your kids through this, like how they envision it being implemented. Let's see what else. I put the CTE folder here, or this is one I actually clicked for Diana because I knew she'd be here. So it's a cooking appliance video project. So they essentially get to choose a common appliance that they have potentially, and you could probably even, I don't even own an immersion blender, but you could tweak that for whatever. So they have to go select a recipe and like they can click here to find the recipe and then explore more. They get it approved, and then they have to complete like a lab plan of like how they would implement or use that cooking appliance inside of their recipe. And so then they can create a video. This is the pre-production, like here's how you would create the video. This is what it should include. Filming and editing, here's what you need to do that. Gives them links to tutorials about WeVideo, which is a piece they can use on their Chromebooks, how to turn it in, and you would just make this a live link from your Schoology account. And then this would be how it is graded. So, I mean, literally, I didn't make that. I just found that, and I was like, oh, Diana would like that, I think. So there's that. And I guess I didn't link the Hyperdoc folder for CTE, but you can get it here. Melissa, what's up?
Can you at the end show how to put this into Schoology?
Yeah, I absolutely can.
Like, what does that part look like?
Sure. Yeah. Let me do Diana's to start. So I'll have that one be the one that I add to Schoology. This one is a link to media literacy. So getting kids to understand that like not all media is created equal, and you need to be mindful about like what you choose and what you read. And I thought that could be valuable. How to choose your news, and talking about citizen journalism and all sorts of things. So I mean, it's pretty cool. And then finally, the last one is high school novels. I'm an English teacher, so I thought I'd link this. And I didn't put any foreign language or world language, even though I know there's a couple of you in here, but in math, there's math ones as well. I just didn't click them. Sorry, should have. But these are pretty cool. So there's a bunch of different texts that we read. Maybe they're more high school level. And when you click on any of them, so let's say How to Be Anti-Racist by Iram Kindi, he has like, this is a Twitter post that kind of links to a Hyperdoc, or maybe it's this one, the Marrow Thieves. And it is already a Hyperdoc for that text. So I thought those were pretty cool. And then before I go show it on Schoology, there's just one more resource I want to show you. So these are some tech resources for Hyperdoc creation that I found. This is like, if you click it, it's just a Padlet, where people said these are some tools you could use, like technical tools you could use for expressing ideas. So Padlet or Kahoot, a Prezi, VoiceThread, which is like, you know, to be able to like do audio. You could also use Vocaroo. That's easy. And then there's a whole Hyperdoc handbook you can reference. This is the website that I was showing you. So that's the hyperdocs.co. Jennifer Gonzalez, who's like, this is my favorite blog. She writes a blog called Cult of Pedagogy, and she does a whole thing on Hyperdocs for you. Ditch that textbook. His name's Eric Kurtz, and he does a whole thing on it. You get the point. And then finally, I bring this up every time I present, but I am obsessed with Wakelet. Wakelet is my favorite EdTech curation tool. It's saved my butt so many times. And this person has taken the internet and she's put 26 items she's found on Hyperdocs. And so all you have to do is click one of these links and you can find out the information from the website. So she went and did the searching for me. Okay, that was a lot of talking, but before we go over to Schoology, can I answer any questions that you guys might have? Nope, no, everybody feels good about life? Or at least you're thinking? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and make this a copy of this so that it lives in my own drive. By the way, just wanna say one more time, if you noticed, I have a fancy cursor. That's extension. So when kids are kind of clicking around, if you know, we have our traditional little black cursor and we're trying to show something, sometimes they can't see it. And so if you're looking to get a custom cursor as well, you can just Google custom cursor and it gives you this extension that you can add. And there's a variety of different cursors that you could choose from. So you can make it super bright. I could be How to Train Your Dragon, Popeye, Leonardo, Shrek, and Donkey. There's food, lifestyles like skateboard, leaves. Men in Black. So you have options there. I chose this right here, but it allows students to see where your cursor is a little bit. Also, this is a really cool extension. Before I continue, let's celebrate that we all did it. We all made it to this point. Hey, happy birthday. Woohoo. This is wonderful. So glad you could be here with me. It is a confetti extension. I do want to say one thing about it though. If you do download this extension, it's called confetti everywhere or something like that. So if you Googled that extension, it gets rid of your shortcut for bolding out things, because the shortcut to use the extension is Control-B. So just a heads up. Yes, Mary.
I think you mentioned yesterday that we have to get permission to change our cursor.
Yeah. So I talked to Phil Black yesterday. Were you able to add it, or does it say admin has blocked? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Admin blocked it.
Okay. I talked to Phil yesterday and he said, I told him that he needs to open those all up. And I told him I would follow up by the end of the day today to make sure to remind him he needed to do that. So I'm trying to get him open for us.
Thank you, because it even makes me nuts when I lose my cursor and I'm just by myself, much less the students.
Yeah, I feel you. All right, so Melissa, let's go ahead and I will head over to Schoology and I'll show you how to integrate this into an assignment. So the way Bill Hinshaw made a Bitmoji, guys. He's very, very happy. Look at that. Let's celebrate Bill. Woo, okay. So I'm just going to go to my course. So I would scroll down. So let me zoom in a little bit because I have it zoomed out. Okay. So there's two ways you can do this. How I envision it happening is I would put the I'd probably put it out on Page, and then create an assignment when the due date was coming up and have them add their like document to that assignment. So the way that I would do it, do you think that's the best way, Saps? You weren't listening. You were taputoing me.
I wasn't. I was. Ask
So what I was thinking about putting it on a page, like the forced copy on a page, and then adding an assignment, and they could just upload that copy to that assignment when the due date was rolling around.
that I think is probably the best way. Yeah.
Or they can do it. I can just make it an assignment, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Or
they
you
can
publish it to the web.
Yeah.
And add the HTML code into a page.
Oh, that's not a bad idea. But then they wouldn't get a copy to click on to fill it out. So
no, they wouldn't.
Yeah. So I'm going to do it just in an old-fashioned assignment way for you.
Can you just explain why would you decide page over assignment? Like,
sure.
Is the page interactive, or what's the reason for thinking about that?
Yeah, the page would just be delivery of information. And then, but now that I think about it, they're actually, so a page is simply just a page. It's just there to give information. They're not turning anything in with the page. It's just like, I need you to have these instructions or these directions, or this is a tool for you to reference, right? Maybe you're going to give them a sentence frame that you want them to reference throughout the unit, and you don't want them to type on the sentence frame necessarily, but you want them to be able to have it. You can add that as a page, and then later they can reference that when they're writing their sentence frame steps.
And also any like slides that you have for students that you want them to be able to go back and reference, I would put all of those as pages, because then it lives in Schoology, and you can even set it so that it doesn't open to a new page. It just lives on the actual Schoology page, and students can just click through it at their own pace.
Yeah. So if I was giving this, Melissa, if I was giving this as a, just as like them to like reference, and I didn't want them to like write on anything. So here's the thing about this one, and why I debated on this one being a page versus an assignment, is because there's nowhere on here where they're actually filling anything out. There's no boxes to type in. Does that make sense? And so if there were boxes to type in, that'd be a different story, right? Because I'd want them to have their own copy. But because this is just like they're clicking links and filling out like a Google form or lab plan, that's going to be something separate. So like I'll show you. This would be like the lab plan grocery list perhaps that they would fill out. I would make this, see how it says request edit access, it's a view only. So I probably would link it here where they had to do that forced copy or whatever. So that's why I was debating. That's the only reason why. If there were boxes to type in, then I probably would have just made it straight up an assignment. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thanks.
So I'll put it in as a page. So let's go to add materials, and then you go to add page. And we can call this cooking appliance video project. And the reason why I was like hesitating on an assignment or a page is like, if you make it as a page, there's no due date, right? Because you're not turning anything in. So I was like, how am I going to get my kids to know that like they need to have this done by this day? But the cool thing, the way that this is designed, is it has like the days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, right? So that is that's one way to do it, by putting these are the days that I need you to work on it on the actual document. Okay, so now that we're here, what I'm going to do is, since it's part of my Google Drive, I'm going to go ahead and go up to insert content. So that's up on this formatting bar. I'm going to go over to Google Drive resource app. And then it's going to populate in just a second. Okay, I'm going to click that right there, cooking appliance video project. I'm going to go up to this button. Once that little checkbox is clicked, I'm going to go up to import. And I'm going to go import embed. Embed means you want the full thing to live inside Schoology. You don't want them to have to click a link that takes them outside Schoology, right? That would be those two. We're going to go import embed. And it's going to load for us. Maybe slow. Nope, good. And remember, if you've done training with me before on this, if you see a yellow box in Schoology, you know it's good to go. Okay. I could resize it if I wanted to, so I can make it bigger, right? And for sake of Mackenzie, I'm gonna go ahead and center it because she likes everything centered. She doesn't like it be left aligned or right aligned. If you wanted to add, like, again, just wanted to kind of point out that these down here are like the attachments. They work similar to attachments in an email. So if this is the body of the email, but I wanted to add something additional for them, maybe I would add an attachment. So if I wanted to maybe upload a model, like of a sample lab plan that they could reference, I could put that here if I don't have it like linked here, right? If I wanted to give them encouragement, I can send a little video. Hey guys, I know this is all new for us, but just do your best. We're gonna get through this together, and I look forward to your videos. Right? Just a little sense of encouragement. It links as a WebM. They get to see your face. They get to hear your voice. They get to know that you're thinking about them aside from just putting an assignment up there. It makes it a little bit personal. So I'll show you again how I did that, but that's going to be those bottom 5 icons at the bottom of the Word like formatting area, and it's the mic drop. It does take a second when I'm on Zoom to upload. Once it's uploaded, it'll say insert recording. Notice it lives right here. Now the benefit of a WebM, just so we're clear, a WebM, it opens up into a web browser tab when they view it. They don't have to download it to their computer and then they have to open it up on their computer. It just opens into a web tab. So it's a lot smaller file, so it won't take as long for them to watch. And then you can individually assign it again one more time. Those 3 dots allow you to individually assign. If you haven't heard yet, I just want to mention this. So we have A and B groups, right? And we don't necessarily want our materials to go out to the B group when we're putting it out for the A group. So there's a way to create grading groups. This is how I'm planning on doing that. There's a way to create grading groups in Schoology. And I'm going to set all of my A kids as grading group A and all of my B kids as grading group B. So when I push stuff out, it'll only be set to grading group A. And then I can go back and set the assignment just to grading group B in the afternoon. The green dot means it's going to get published. And then this one here, if I click it, that means that it's going to stay inside Schoology. If it's grayed out like it is right there, that means it's going to force them to go open up to a new page. So I always click it to keep it inside Schoology. And let's cross our fingers that this works. And you push create. And there it is. Just lives right there inside Schoology. And they could click on these links still. They're still active links, right? Like I said, I'd probably change this lab plan to like force make a copy so that they don't have to do file, make a copy. It's just a little trick to help them out. And then my web recording at the bottom. Hey guys, I know this is all new for us, but just do your best. We're gonna get through this together, and I look forward to your videos. Right, so a little encouragement, and there it is. So it lives in line, and they just can now scroll right there, and they don't have to leave Schoology at all. Is that what you were kind of thinking? And then when you wanted to like turn in that lab project, you could create an assignment later on. So I can go to add materials, add assignment, and I can call it cooking appliance lab project. If I can spell lab project, and then I could put, please attach your completed cooking appliance lab project. And I would not do a Google Drive assignment because that would mean I am giving them a document that I've already created them to fill out, but they made their own copy of that document. And so they're gonna need to attach it from their drive because they're the owner. So I would set a due date, make sure I have the points because it always defaults to 50. You have to choose a category. You'll set those up at the beginning of the year one time. And then once again, I could individually assign if I just wanted this to be grading group A or grading group B or individual students. I could copy it to my courses, my other courses. Looks like we have an advisory Schoology, by the way, guys, that got populated. And then you push create. And now they will have that assignment that they could then click and they can go, they'll see like submit assignment here. I'm from a teacher perspective and I don't have any students like actually active. So it'll say submit assignment, they'll click it, and all they have to do is go find it from their Google Drive and upload it. All right, so that's that. Can I answer any questions for anybody?
I'm wondering if you recorded this session, and are you going to upload the recording
I will,
for
of course,
everybody
yeah.
who isn't here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be, we upload all recordings in our Redwood Teacher Schoology page. So if you are not part of that, it looks like I still have, there's 84 members. It looks like there's 8 people that haven't jumped on. Daniel, you're one of them, so you don't have access. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a connection and maybe you'll see it. You just go up to groups, right? And then my groups, and you'll see it there. And so then where we share it is over on this left side. So we're in our group right now. This left side, you push resources. And if you go to digital apps, tools, session, materials, every single training we've done this week has its own folder. So ours will live right here under Hyperdocs. You could see right here, this was, I haven't uploaded ours from Nicole and I's session, but you know, everybody's been putting stuff in. So any other questions? All right, well, that's all I have for you today. So these will be put up in just a few minutes after we're done here. I'm doing one more lesson on Flipgrid. I'm super excited about it. It's probably gonna be the one tech piece that I'm like stoked about. But you know, I think it'll be beneficial for every single one of our classes. And I'm thinking it's gonna be super beneficial for the auditory part of a world language class. So I would encourage you to join me if you have time. Yeah, that's all. So thanks so much, guys. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We have to do this together, right? So hashtag better together is my new hashtag this season. So that's all. Have a great day. No problem.